Hi there, I'm Mike Shope with Pat Corrane and Davis Maddock. It's ADP chasing for the finally end of the best ball regular season. One more game to go, and then we decide whether, where do you start? Keyshawn Vaughn is the guy you need? I don't know. But not all your entries will lose, but most. And we might, want to say our goodbyes to those as we lean into the best ball playoffs. Thanks for being with us today with Pat and Davis. I'm Mike. This is ADP Chasing, December 9th, 2024.
ADP chasing is for when you watch ship chasing, you go, these guys are just football guys.
And the targets per outrun leagues, that's going to be really nice.
Actually, back in if it's Ashane.
Stare into our crystal ball. Close your eyes. All your entries are going to lose anyway.
Yeah, that's fair.
This is a Deuce Vaughn show.
It's anti-cabal. It's anti the best ball thought leaders. I'm obviously lying to some degree because, I have a lot of both of these guys.
It's the most disgusting pick you can make. But, man.
Let's go. Hi, guys. Our heroes, Pat and Davis. I definitely felt some sadness, some jealousy when it came to Dog Bowl this weekend. Maybe, Pat, I should have entered it.
Yeah, no. That is generally how one gets to go to the Dog Bowl. I didn't really enter it either. Why not? The newborn. Having a newborn. The newborn's not sleeping right now. So she's also not a newborn. She's like 8 months.
She's I was going to say, she's like 8 months old, dude.
You can't get away with
sleeping
that,
about as well as a newborn. So she's a newborn until she can sleep through the night.
Wait, Pat, remember the rule of Pete. She's 0. We always round 0 to years. So she's not 1 yet.
So we can round up. We can round up to 1 now. Well, she's closer to 1 than 0. Yeah. But yeah,
looked like fun though.
It sounded like a fun time. Yeah, it looked like a fun time.
I get zero FOMO for those things. Literally none. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just a stick in the mud, bro. It's very much not for me. It's anti-cabal of me to not want to go to the cabal event.
What can we get Davis?
I've had fun with you in New York. You can have a good time. You're not.
Yeah, that wasn't cabal though. That was we were just sitting.
It was me, you, and Pete. It's a cabal adjacent.
Cabal adjacent for sure. Yeah, that was a good time.
Team names are being, sent to R&D for next year. Cabal adjacent. What do we get Davis to? I've met Pat a few times in different the Expo in Vegas, and I'm not everywhere, but I even have been talking. I have a friend in St. Louis. No pressure, Davis. You and I have not had this conversation, but I have a friend in St. Louis. I love to go there and see a ball game every couple of years. We've got RotoPat in St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we have to go to him, Pat.
Do you golf, Mike?
I play. Yep.
That's you can get me out of the house to golf generally. Generally, that will I'll do a golf trip
to play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to play.
All right, we've got Ryder Cup. We're not going to play in the Ryder Cup. We've got that in New York State. I'm stretching it. It's about 8 hours away at Bethpage this year, but all right. Noted. We'll talk about that. Either of you guys. So I'm in Buffalo and I'm working on the Bills network. We had a 4:25 game Eastern yesterday. So that affords me sort of the 1 o'clock. It felt right with my family's other stuff to sort of watch the 1 o'clock games. And by 1:15, I was thinking of you guys in terms of is Saquon Barkley's dud a week early? You had a big Gainwell play early. I'm not watching the game. I don't know if he's hurt or what's happening. So I don't know if that thought crossed your minds. He eventually got there, of course. Not a huge game for him, but still over 100 and still on pace to break the record.
Yeah, I downplayed the Giant game from a few weeks ago purely from a best ball perspective in terms of the impact it's going to have because he's already on such a massive advance rate that the teams that pushed over the line are probably not even that good, you know, or a lot of them aren't. But I would also downplay this stud. This stud doesn't matter either. He's still going to smash. So, yeah, as far as if you don't have Saquon and you were looking forward to a dud, this does nothing for you. And you're still in the exact same situation you were last week heading into week 15.
The bigger issue is actually in the context of best ball is that Barkley teams were either advancing or just super dust, like the worst possible team in your pod. The bigger issue was guys who were marginal advance rate guys: Darnold, Jefferson, Addison, Josh Allen, Puka Nacua. These guys, like Puka Nacua was a negative advance rate player. I'm going to guess. I have not checked today. I'm going to guess he is now a positive advance rate player. Josh Allen was a negative advance rate player. I'm going to guess he is. I'm going to guess the Josh Allen swing from yesterday is the biggest single week swing in advance rate of any player. I despite Justin Jefferson being on my most drafted list, I believe he was my 5th most drafted player overall, having his best game of the season. I lost teams yesterday.
Yeah, I lost some teams too.
So I'm going to guess that a big chunk of that was Puka teams that were close and Josh Allen teams. So what can you do? What can you do? You live and you learn, I suppose.
Allen over 50 points. You know, we haven't talked about quarterback too many times. A lot of this show, since at least I've jumped on, has been sort of reflecting on what we did right or wrong and the season that's gone by. And if you look at it's not a fantasy stat, but you look at the passing leaders right now, and it kind of can blow your mind. I mean, it's Geno Smith up top. Cousins makes sense. Burrow makes sense. Then it's Mayfield. Lamar, of course. I mean, Mayfield, I think, has been in sort of the Darnold shadow a little bit this year, but I might just that's only my perspective. But, you know, if Jameis Winston, if not for Watson's contract, Jameis would be on this list too. Guys who were maybe interesting. Go back to fantasy football, think about Dynasty or whatever 5 to 7 years ago, and they're leading the NFL in passing this year. It's not Mahomes. It's just kind of a weird year like that. What was the right overall strategy when it came to quarterback? I mean, Allen had this game yesterday, Pat, but still, Jalen Hurts keeps running them in. Hilarious again yesterday with Barkley just getting stopped at the 1, maybe twice.
Well, I mean, it's a strange year because a lot of the late round hits weren't really drafted, right? Like you'd say Jameis was, not even a late round guy. He wasn't on the radar. You look at Darnold. I mean, for most of the offseason, we were assuming that McCarthy would eventually be starting these games or maybe, well before now. And then even after McCarthy got hurt, Darnold wasn't like a big target for people generally. Russell Wilson, we had the whole Russell Wilson field stuff, but that kept his ADP way low. So some of the guys that you'd really like to have now just aren't like in the pool as much. I mean, but at the same time, you do have like Baker's been a big hit. There have been some big hits. Jaden Daniels was a big hit and kind of heading into the double-digit rounds. So there were a ton of ways to play later round quarterback.
Knicks.
I do think that the elite quarterbacks are probably better picks than like I feel like they are, because I wasn't pairing Lamar and Henry. I wasn't pairing Lamar or Hurts and Saquon. If you have those, if you have like Hurts, Saquon in your portfolio, then elite.
I tell you what, man, I don't know if I'd be that happy if I was really overweight on Hurts right now. The Eagles very low key have entered into their Chiefs era in the sense that they are they're like,
good.
Yeah, dude, we're good here. We're good. Let's just call 22 points and just call it good. Like, and by the way, I don't know if you guys caught this. AJ Brown yesterday, you guys catch this in the press conference? They said, "Oh, what can you guys improve on?" And he just deadpan looks at the reporter and he says, "Passing." And they go, "Do you want to elaborate it on that?" And he says, "Passing." Next question. Not very Gucci headband of Jalen Hurts. Although, let me tell you, the satisfaction I felt when Grant Calcaterra, who I have to be truly the only person in the fantasy community who has championed this guy, scored a touchdown yesterday, that it felt, I was like, I knew I was right about this. I knew.
Wrong just early.
Oh, Davis. I mean, that's when my Wi-Fi goes out, that's on brand. This is so on brand. If you guys were Larry Sanders Show fans, there's one episode where Janine Garofalo is trying to book for Larry Sanders, and she books some actor or some comedian, and like he's kind of a nobody. And Larry Sanders says, "What? Gallagher's out of fruit." Is that too old a reference? I don't know. Like, of course,
I've heard good things about the Larry Sanders show. I've never watched it.
Of course, Calcaterra is on your list.
I'm such a degenerate that I don't relate Larry Sanders to the Larry Sanders show. I relate Larry Sanders to the old Milwaukee Bucks center who led the National Basketball Association in blocks. This was like 2015 era or something. But yeah, Historical Anomalies has the stat in the chat that I was looking for. Hurts completions 14-11, 15-8, 14 the last 5 games, which I believe were all victories.
And they keep pounding the rock like way more. I don't know what their PROE was yesterday. I can pull it up, but they've been outrageously run heavy over the last, really since their week 5 bye. Every week since their week 5 bye. They've played the Jags and they've played the Ravens. They've been in all these situations where if they wanted to, they could have passed. But it's not how they're built right now.
Well, this might not exactly reflect on Philadelphia. I know they've played Dallas twice and they've played the Giants once, but what's maybe a takeaway from this year, I don't know if it is from a fantasy sense, 32 teams in the NFL. I think still there's no teams in like London or Moscow next yet, but it's 32. Yeah. Brazil, 8 are 3-10 or 2-11. And that doesn't even include tonight's teams, Cincinnati and Dallas, who could also shut down Chase and Lamb, Higgins, depending on where Davis, you made this point a couple of weeks ago. Look out if Cincinnati loses to Pittsburgh, which they did. So I know we got the Simpsons, meaning that game is locked in on Monday night game. But
perfectly cromulent, people are saying.
A quarter of the league is 3-10 or 2-11. Breece Hall, Neighbors, some of these guys that seemed like good, if not great bets, are just kind of a victim to these teams were all dead a month ago.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't they shut their best players down?
Well, the thing is football players don't do that. Pat and I talked about this last week. I literally don't even remember what show it was. But we did talk about this. Like, Jacob made this point to me. That's an NBA thing. NFL teams, Trevor Lawrence had his non-throwing shoulder was like separated, and he was like, can't wait to play. Can't wait to play for my dead Jacksonville Jaguars team and my coach, who is for sure
to get out there and
fired.
Light it up for Doug.
Yeah, these guys. Now, Higgins and Chase, I think you could say there's very real reason to think that they might not play because neither of them have got their guaranteed money, basically. Higgins in particular, I think, would be more likely. Chase, I think, wants to lead he wants to lead the league in all the categories, right? We actually did talk about this last week where he and Chase wanted to pay $1 more than Jefferson, and Jefferson had the huge game yesterday, so now he leads the league in receiving. Chase will want to keep playing. You could definitely see Higgins, and I think Lamb, by the way, I think is a big candidate to get shut because he's banged up. He legitimately has a shoulder injury,
and he got paid.
And he got paid. But by and large, Neighbors is just going to play. Neighbors was supposed to be on a snap count yesterday. He played his highest snaps of the year yesterday, by the way, which is that's just kind of how these guys are built, man. Football players, you got to be built different to play football. They mostly just play. And
the coaches there's no incentive to shut your guys down as the coach. You're much more likely to get fired. If the product on the field is horrendous, you'll get fired. That's always the lesson in the NFL. It doesn't really matter. The bigger picture, immediately gets forgotten about every single time. So,
well, this is going to go the other way eventually, if not soon, because tanking has been a topic in sports since what? Patrick Ewing. Again, another.
This is the wrong class to tank for.
Well, that might be true, but still, the first pick is better to have than the second, and on down. Yeah. And other sports have graduated to this kind of thinking. Why? Because the data supports it. And football players might be built different, but they don't get to decide. And the coaches are middle managers anyway. So it's going to be up to the organization. This is what we're going to do. It depends on who owns the team, first of all, and then sort of what their priorities are. Is the coach somebody who's secure in his job, or is he somebody that, can't afford to mess around? That might make a difference. But we are headed toward, running back by committee has already been a form of this. Run your running back into the ground. No, because this is a little bit more optimal, strategic, safer, different reasons for doing that. So we do that because
is running back by committee bad, by the way? Like what the Seahawks just did with Zach Charbonnet, is that sharper? You go workhorse by committee.
Well, running back by committee is bad in the way that some teams do it, because this is a huge problem for the Ravens. What the Ravens are going to do based on their personnel. When they bring Justice Hill and Mark Andrews in, they're passing the ball. When they bring, I guess it used to be Charlie Collar, now it's when they have Patrick Ricard and Derrick Henry on the field, they're running the ball, or they're going to do play action, and it's going to be a deep shot to Bateman. That's like their play out of that personnel. It very obviously forecasts. I think that's why now Doug McDermott, another monumental high school football mistake.
Sean McDermott.
Sorry,
I don't know who you're morphing him with, or if it's good or bad.
Doug McDermott is another NBA player. Sean McDermott with another monumental can't have it timeout and mistake yesterday. But something I think that he and Brady do have well dialed in is Ty Johnson and James Cook and Ray Davis are basically interchangeable. They hand the ball off to Ty Johnson. They'll run the 2-minute drill with Ray Davis if they have to, if he's on the field. They are very good out of those multiple looks in a way that
where
the
did
Lions
Ty Johnson usage come from? The dude was all over the place yesterday.
Look, only one of them is ever on the field. They'll have a sixth lineman on the field for half the game. Johnson got a little swing pass that he took to the house yesterday. Davis had a 0 after a week where he scored, and you might have wanted to try him.
But he only played 10 fewer snaps than Cook. Ray Davis did.
Well, if I can go into Buffalo mode for a minute, what concerns me more than the timeout and sort of the end game situation, which for the 4th year in a row, the Bills have lost the game of the year in the NFL. Somehow they managed to do that. Is like McDermott after the game talking about how impressive or important the Rams running game was, and we couldn't get ours going. That's in his heart of hearts, I think. The Rams ran for 3 yards per carry. They just ran 45 times.
It's in every coach's heart of hearts. And you know what? I've reached such an age now where I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you just need to be able to run the ball for a 9-minute drive to break the spirit. Is there anything more demoralizing than giving up a 3rd and 3 run? The team runs on 3rd and 3 and they convert. That just has to, as a defense, you just have to be like, oh, Jesus Christ, this still has to keep going. Like, it's so demoralizing.
It's so funny though, because like the Bills were down so bad.
Yeah.
Like the game's over for like 95% of teams in the league. And the Bills are one of the few teams where you're like, this isn't over. Like they could come storming back. Right. And like, then you're like watching them play, you're like, they're going to come back. Like this is going to happen. Their defense let them down. The idea that it was a run game is so silly. Like, you can't score points like that through the run game. Like they were scoring points in bunches, like nonstop.
By the way, the Bills defense cost our friend Peter Overzet $40,000. He had the main battle royale and Underdog locked up yesterday, effectively at the end of the 3rd quarter of that game, and Kittle caught a pass to put him ahead of Puka Nacua, and it was basically done and dusted. And then the Bills were just like, you know what? Let's just sound and fury signifying nothing. Let's score this last touchdown. Josh Allen had 25 fantasy points in that 4th quarter alone. Crazy.
The defense is the problem where Allen is.
Allen is not the problem. Allen is
Pete's problem. Pete's problem. 3 rushing touchdowns. Yeah. Pat's point. They're always in it. They have lost 2 games by 10 points or more in 4 years.
How many?
2. They lost to Baltimore this year, which I want to go back to them, by the way, because I think Davis was really saying this is why they shouldn't have signed Henry. And
they should not have signed Henry, which feels insane given how productive he's been. Rico Dowdle and Tony Pollard would be better fits for what they need.
They lost to Indianapolis here by 26 points when Jonathan Taylor scored 5 touchdowns 3 years ago. Like that's it. They do not have any bad losses. The fans in Buffalo make it a point about close games, and I'm sure I'm going to face 4 hours of that when I get done with you guys. When I get to work today on the post game yesterday, the first 2 calls were like fire McDermott, which, you might tell me that's what they should do. But back to you, Davis, on the Ravens.
They need to, well, basically, I think Tony Pollard would have been a better fit for them because it allows them to remain multiple. Tony Pollard is a very, very good running back, and Derrick Henry is a great rusher, but not a great running back for the modern game, if that makes sense. I mean, and now obviously Henry will have 350 rushing yards in a home playoff game or whatever.
I think the Henry signing is fine. I think like the Bills yesterday, the issue for the Ravens is defense. If they had a good defense, the Ravens would be such a problem. They'd be a lot like the Eagles. I mean, they can throw it on you, they can run it on you. Like, there's no good answers when you're playing the Ravens.
Well, Lamar is way better than Jalen Hurts, and obviously that pains me as my Oklahoma helmet is behind me, but Lamar is on like a different planet from Hurts.
I think Lamar's better than Hurts too. So I mean, having Derrick Henry is kind of this alternate punch that you've got in addition to Lamar.
No,
really punishing defenses for overly focusing on taking away Lamar. And then you have Lamar in the run game, and Henry and Lamar help each other there. So
if the Ravens had a great defense, Henry might be Barkley. I mean, even from week 1 when they lost in Kansas City, like Henry isn't interesting in this game. They're 8-5. Like, they're not likely to have any home playoff games. They're in trouble. They'll make the playoffs. They're still like 98% to make it. So we want to be drafting them in these playoff things. But
the Ravens just find the way to lose. Like, they just lose the dumbest games all the time. It's just insane. Like, every game they lose, they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
But the Ravens are in the worst spot on defense that you can be in, which again runs counter to McDermott's point, which is
crazy against the run.
They're great against the run, and they're terrible against the pass. Like, there's no worse spot to be in than to like ask offenses to throw on you. The coaches, as we know, are still a little bit too tilted to the idea that they need to move the ball on the ground. And so if they're like, well, I basically have to throw here, like you're going to get points put up against you. It's rough. The Eagles are like the only team that didn't do it to them.
Even still, there's this hat tip: establish the run crowd. And here's the literal head coach of the Bills yesterday talking about, well, we really could have that was important in this game, and too bad you didn't establish the run because you only scored 42 points.
It's kind of like I would have rather lost like a man. Like this,
that's right.
Coming back and scoring all these points and then getting scored on again. I just hated it so much. I'd rather have fallen 6 points short at the very end and just run it a bunch and ran out of time like a man.
Yeah.
Right. I said for years on the radio here before McDermott that Rex Ryan, when he was coaching the Bills, he thought passing was effeminate.
Yeah, that's what it is. Fundamentally,
his dad is literally Buddy Ryan. Is that too old a reference for you two?
No, I know Buddy Ryan.
Get the Bears hat out.
The thing is they just always you're going to spend all day on radio talking about this, but the Bills ran the quarterback sneak on 1st and goal from the 1, causing them to take a timeout. Obviously, they thought they could get it, but like that is the type of thing you cannot do. That they lose the game right there because then they run out of the ability to call the timeouts.
Right.
When they turn the ball back over, and it's like, well, you
possession.
Need to.
That play was an entire possession. I mean, it was a possession. It was very limited.
Basically it was. Basically it was. Yeah, and it's just like, well, you can't. Yeah, I mean, that's all. Dom in the chat makes a great point. Like, sure, we're going to spend all afternoon talking about the timeouts. The timeouts are an error, but it's like, it's the same thing with the Chiefs last night. It's like, dude, if the freaking Chargers, like, we can be mad about the way Kansas City handles their stuff and doesn't go for it on 4th down and doesn't run the ball and the defensive holding that wasn't called and stuff. But like, if Vlad McConkey plays in that game, what did the Chargers win by?
-1. Negative. Yeah. They lose. There's something that happens before we get away from the Bills. Do you guys know that they had 9 players on the field for the punt?
Field? Yeah.
What the timeout meant was the Rams did not have to get a first, assuming they recovered an onside kick. They did not have to get another first down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So with the Bills, like 13 seconds, it's always like this. There's always a timeout before the gaff. where you have like extra time to sort of process and get it right. Somehow they have 9 players on the field, and then the punt is in the air and they let it drop and the game's over. I mean, the only chance you have with the ball in the air is to catch it and try to run for a touchdown, and that doesn't happen either. So not great.
Not great.
Not great.
No. What
Kansas City
supposed to be a defensive guy?
Well, he was. I mean, he calls that. He calls that timeout.
He's trying being a defensive guy again. It might help the team.
It's a conundrum here, Pat. I mean, they've won constantly. Remember that stat from 2 minutes ago? Like they win constantly.
What if he's Mark Jackson and they need their Steve Kerr? What if he's the guy who he's the guy who sets the table. He's the guy who teaches him how to win. He's the guy who teaches them how to be men, but you need the genius tactician. You need the guy to take him to the next level.
That's a good comp.
You don't have. The owner here is not wired like that. I mean, the Bills went from nowhere to this, and McDermott is not going away.
It's also all pattern matching. Like the Bills could very easily win the Super Bowl this year. If they don't lose the 13 seconds game, they probably win the Super Bowl that year. So it's just like variance just happening in real life. It's hard for our brains to make sense of it. Although I do continually tend to think that in a way that, by the way, Andy Reid used to be this guy. Remember when Andy Reid was like, oh, he's the funny clock management guy. His teams always mess up the end of games. He never does timeouts right. Like, you can learn and you can, although Andy's been really bad at that stuff this year. So,
and McDermott's been good. This was not a 4th down. This was a timeout, sort of panic mode. He runs down the sideline. You can run the sneak. You can run it again. You still will score on the second one. Probably they don't. Kansas City now about almost 80% to get the 1. Let's talk about these playoff drafts as we get closer to the playoffs. And, movement yesterday, there wasn't a ton. There was a little bit in the NFC West that we might get to with Seattle's win.
My God, the NFC West. No one wants to win it.
The Rams are back in the conversation.
They are, yeah.
After yesterday. They go to San Francisco on Thursday night, who they never beat, but they did just beat earlier this year on kind of a fluke. Anyway, Allen is Allen the 101 for sure now in these drafts?
I've been arguing about this with Sacrilegious for the last 12 hours, and I don't think we have got to a consensus on.
So you think he is the 101 or not the 101?
So I'll tell you why I think he's the 101 and why I think Sac's input. I basically disagree with Sac's inputs to the modeling, which is now that the Chiefs are effectively locked up to the 1 seed, he has changed his narrative on the quote unquote big 5 quarterbacks, where it was Lamar, Allen, Mahomes, Goff, Hurts. He is now assigning a larger percentage of the Super Bowl probability to Russell Wilson, Jordan Love, and Sam Darnold, effectively saying, no big deal if you don't get one of the 5 guys. You still have a plus EV chance of building a Vikings team or a Steelers team or a Packers team or whatever. And my assertion, I just disagree. I really do just disagree. The Steelers, I'm not going to get tricked by them. I'm not going to get tricked by them winning 13 games in the regular season. They're going to go on the road to some team that can score points and get blown out. They won a game yesterday where no player saw more than 4 targets, and their leading receiver I believe Van Jefferson. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I just do not buy it.
I think that it might be the difference because in these playoff best ball contests, we're really focused on who will get to the conference championship game.
And they have a very high probability of that relative to what the field is doing now.
Oh, the field.
Pittsburgh is now, they have a really strong chance of making it to the conference championship game. If you look at like player strength and, what the potential bracket's going to be like, they're pretty well set up now. The issue, I think, is that like if you look at who's actually favored to win the NFC and AFC championship games, then I think you go back to the Big 5 mentality, because like who's actually likely to get not just to the championship game but to win it and advance to the Super Bowl. I just pull up like the DraftKings odds. The Ravens are plus 475. The Steelers are plus 800. to win the AFC.
So Sack is making the point that now Baltimore and Buffalo are set up to play each other. So what that means is, sure, I will lose more teams than the field in the divisional round because I'll have a lot of Bills and I'll have a lot of Ravens. I will just get a huge portion of my teams are going to die in that round. I don't really care.
Hang on, though. Is he right? Like, what are the likeliest seeds right now? The Bills are very likely to be the 2. Not Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh at Philadelphia. Kansas City. Like, Pittsburgh has it rough.
So he's making a comparison between the Ravens and the Steelers, not the Bills and the Steelers.
I know, but how does Baltimore get to Buffalo? Only if 6 wins in the first round against 3. If Bills are 2 and Ravens are 5, which is probably most likely, the Ravens are right on top of Chargers and Denver, and they're better than those teams. So Chargers and Denver are your 6 and 7. Buffalo is the 2, plays one of those teams. The 3 is the Steelers that plays the other.
What if the
Baltimore
Chargers
gets
fall
Houston
out entirely? What if the Chargers fall entirely and the Steelers win the division? Isn't that what's going to happen?
Well, I'm giving the Steelers the division. The Chargers, I mean, somebody could fall out there, but it's still the same point. Miami or Indianapolis in place of the Chargers. If Pittsburgh is the 3, they win at home. They're going to Buffalo as the 2 the next week. Baltimore goes to Kansas City if it wins as the 5. I don't think right now, unless the Ravens lose, they play the Giants next, unless they lose a couple more or one more even, then maybe they're the 6 or the 7, but I don't see how it's more likely that they play the Bills than the Chiefs in round 2.
Yeah, my thinking is more about so taking Allen 101 is going to get you less Barkley 101, because Barkley is kind of the consensus 101. So you're fading Barkley a little bit, which is pretty scary because if you go Barkley, there's still chances you can get, like, where's Mahomes going today? It was pretty easy before to pair Mahomes with Barkley. So you're like, I mean, that's 6 Super Bowl. Now you've got to play around the buys with the Chiefs, but probably not with the Eagles.
Well, you know the other funny thing about Kansas City teams, Pat? They're not going to score very many fantasy points in the games they win. So that's the other. There are going to be a lot of Chiefs team. The Chiefs might be in the Super Bowl, but it's going to be harder to advance them there because they stink. That's
how it was last year. Like it was difficult to actually get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, even though did they have the bye? They didn't have the bye, right?
They were the 3.
Last year it was Kelsey was the huge edge because you got 4 games. You got 4 games of Kelsey, and he smashed every game.
Look, Allen as the 101 again right now by the odds. That is 4 games in your Super Bowl plan. I mean, they're pretty clearly the best team in the conference. And then at the 2-3 turn, it's what? One of his Cook or whatever you want to do, receive Cooper, and then a Lion.
The thing that's nice about the Bills, though, is you can take their pass catchers the whole way through. I mean, you could take Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid and Matt Collins with your final 3 picks, and they'll be on the field.
And it's pretty easy to get Tim Patrick or one of the Lions at 2-3.
Tim Patrick's expensive now. People are kind of woke to Tim Patrick.
Well, then we don't do that. Then we know
Brock Wright. Brock Wright is this year's Juwan Jennings. People are saying.
It just to not shut the door on the Kansas City stuff. It's hilarious, right? I mean, what was the script going to be last night? Adam Krautwurst, my deep end co-host, was like, this is going to be a walk-off safety one way or another. That's all that's left. I mean, how many scenarios are left? And I'm envisioning, not at the time, I can't say I called this, but after the game's over, it's sort of those conversations on the Chiefs sideline where they know they've got it, is like the kicker going, why don't I just bank it? Isn't that more interesting? Like, I could just bank it. That's new. What's left for Kansas City? It's incredible. What an incredible season. Hilarious.
Incredible, not the word. Incredible, not the word I would use. Personally, it's a dreary season.
A dreary road.
One of those dreary 12-1 seasons. I know.
I'm telling you guys, dude. It's not. Who has fun watch? The team is not having fun playing. They're not fun to watch. You spend the whole game just wishing that Xavier Worthy would catch a long pass. He never does. You watch Mahomes yell at his linemen. No one's having any fun. They're mad. They don't get one call yesterday. The fans at Arrowhead don't get one call. DeAndre Hopkins getting held on the deep ball. and they start doing the refs you suck chant. These are ungrateful, unhappy people.
The vibes are bad.
The Chiefs are very similar to that last Steelers team, the last Roethlisberger Steelers. They won all those games. No one believed in them. Everyone thought they were frauds. Now, obviously, the difference is Mahomes obviously is better than any of these other guys. And at any point, Kelsey gets some good steroids. This left tackle they signed, Humphreys, maybe he learns the system. I mean, he was pretty bad last night.
He got hurt again.
Great. Awesome.
Right? Last night,
Yeah.
Did he leave the game?
I fell asleep at halftime.
You left the game.
Buddy, there's not enough money on earth that could have got me to the end of a 19-17 Chargers game. I can't. I love the Chiefs. I love Mahomes. I can't do it, man. I cannot stay up for these games. I get up at 5 a.m.
We'll do it for you. We'll agonize. We'll watch and agonize for you.
And when I woke up and checked the box score and I saw it was 19-17, I was like, sure it was. Why wouldn't it be? Of course it was. They banked in a field goal off the up. Of course, yeah. Of course they banked it in off the upright.
It wasn't as much a doink as it was a rim shot from the Chiefs at this point. At Cleveland this week. Seattle, Arizona, back to the playoff drafts. So Seattle makes a big move in terms of the odds with that win. They've swept the Cardinals. They're a game up. The Rams win. The Niners are not dead. The Cardinals, by the percentages, the probabilities, the Cardinals and Niners are both close to dead. But so we're not drafting them, I would think, at this stage. But what is Seattle? JSN, Pat, come on. I mean, going back to last year, this guy's having a breakout season.
Yes, it's awesome. I wasn't as in on him this year. I got talked into him. Sacrilegious was pretty big on him. Ben Gretsch was pretty big on him. Kind of got me back on. I was pretty disappointed in his rookie year, but it's nice to see him coming on.
He's the wide receiver 5 in points per game.
Wow. That actually bums me out.
That's more of a stat about wide receiver scoring than it is about JSN, to be frank.
And Lockett, Davis, I was watching you yesterday morning, and you're like, you got a question about Lockett? Like, yeah, he's old. 0 yesterday.
He's not even a full-time player anymore. They're doing more 12 personnel. They're doing AJ Barner instead of Tyler. Look, man, time waits for no man. You know, there's just really nothing you can do when Ozymandias comes for you, and they have came for Tyler Lockett.
Who's live in the NFC? Detroit, Philadelphia, Minnesota wins again. There's obviously fantasy-friendly options there. Is there anybody else? The Bucs? Who else do we care about?
The Bucs, if you are playing playoff best ball, the team that you want to advance is the Bucs because they are awesome for fantasy. They have a bunch of guys who get points. Baker, Bucky, Rashad White, Mike Evans, Cade Otton. These guys get fantasy points, and
they have a bad defense too. So you're kind of excited about the games they play in. The other thing about who's more likely to win a game?
Exactly, not the Falcons.
Yeah, like give me a break. So I just think from a playoff perspective, like the Bucs are a better team. They're a more fun team. Let's get them in. I think it's nice to see the Cardinals going. I'm sick of the Cardinals. You know,
I am also sick of the Cardinals.
Same.
Very, very sick. Yeah.
They spike for these big games where you're like, oh, it's all working. Like Kyler looks great, but then they so often just like no show. And they have this like specific formula where they got to get the run game going and then they do stuff off that. Like I like the Seahawks they're just kind of winging it. It feels like a little more, like stuff just kind of happening. And then the Rams, I mean, that was fun. I would like more of that in my life.
Kyler Murray at this point, what is he? Like here is a season where San Francisco goes away and the Rams are up and down. It's like right there. They played Seattle twice in the last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. They lost both games, both by double digits. Like this was Murray's year to show, just maybe less in fantasy, but in sort of real football, like what he is. He's got the contract. He had this sort of second opportunity, second act for him without Kingsbury. And it's just
too short.
It's just okay.
He's too short.
Honestly, I think that's a big part of it.
He's too short. He's still a very good scrambler. He's still a very accurate passer. But you have to, when your quarterback is 5'9", you've got to design your offense in such a way. And it seems like maybe they don't want him running as much as he did the year he was great, both for the year they won 11 games and the year he was awesome for fantasy. I would guess because he's a very small man and they don't want him getting tackled 100 times a year. The offensive line's also pretty bad. And they also seem a bit confused as to how to use Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler are a bad stylistic fit. Marvin Harrison Jr. is kind of like a classic. Who's a good
needs
style?
Needs Burrow.
Not even. He needs a Stafford. He'd be electric with Stafford. Lots of let him use his big, strong hands. Just kind of let him run these boundary routes where the quarterback has to fit it in a tight window and stuff like that. McBride is the way better fit. It's why McBride gets 14 targets a week, because he basically just runs these very simple crossing routes, shallow post digs.
He runs the stuff that like Kyler can also like run with him.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, you roll to the one direction,
right?
McBride can literally come with.
Yeah. So you're hitting that. That's so much easier. It's like a medium depth route. The guy's running. Yeah. Exactly. Which you would think like a tight end, a little bit more of an over the middle target sometimes. So it's not like. But I think that's part of it.
There are some fun leverage plays on the NFC side when it comes to the playoff best ball, though, because again, I think I mentioned this last week, but 6-3, 5-4, the road teams could be favored in both of those games. With Green Bay maybe going to Seattle, they play this Sunday night, by the way, in Seattle, and then you could have Minnesota going to Seattle or Tampa or something like that. I mean, you could have the road teams being favored there.
I think you would for whoever goes to Tampa would be favored, I think.
Then there's Washington, which could slip into one of those spots too. Washington's playoff odds went up yesterday. They didn't even play. I'm not even sure why, but like they're shorter to make the playoffs.
I would assume it has to do with the Atlanta loss, maybe. I don't know.
And they still play in week 17. But Washington at BetOnline went from minus 325 to make the playoffs Sunday morning to minus 550 today. It's a pretty big jump. So Washington look at New York Times too. They look pretty safe if you want to dabble in them.
It's probably the Falcons' loss, I would guess, because it's a wild card fight.
It is.
Yeah, Washington's decent enough.
That's right.
If you're looking for bye week, if you're drafting Mahomes and then you need one, you need someone to cover your bye in these playoff best ball tournaments. But two, you need a quarterback who actually scores points. You just have Patrick Mahomes. So Jaden Daniels is pretty. We got nothing from Davis there. Nothing.
I'm just laughing to fill the void. I mean, really.
Sorry, I just got a text about the Bitcoin price that I was reading.
Oh well, I'll read about that in Discord.
I knew you weren't when I'm sitting here saying Patrick Mahomes doesn't score any points, and you're just staring off into space. I knew
he also what
he's
am I
watching the games? He's not watching the games anymore.
Dude, I'm not staying up until 11 p.m. local time to watch my team bank a fucking field goal off the upright. They wouldn't do it for me, and I'm not doing it for them.
Washington, Atlanta, week 17. To pivot back to regular season, here we go. Best Ball Mania wrapping up tonight with Cincinnati, Dallas. Week 17, one of them is New Orleans Raiders. That's probably Jake Haener, Desmond Ridder.
Yeah,
at this point.
Carr out for the season.
Carr probably done. O'Connell definitely done. I don't know about Minshew.
Minshew's out for the year. Minshew had to have a surgery, I believe, on his collarbone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just sort of
Twitter time.
Pat, like BBM, one game to go. I think you said earlier you might have stepped back yesterday a little bit. I did with Allen's game and a couple other things. What just instinctively, what feels like it has to go right?
For me?
Yeah.
Can we redo it?
The Patriots not to have a week 14 bye. The Patriots actually to have no buys.
No, I need some Patriots scoring for sure. what do I need? I don't know. The Bengals can't shut everyone down because like Chase Brown and Chase and stuff. Those guys are
actually Jamar Chase and T Higgins being shut down would be fine. Like just build the whole plane out of Chase Brown. Like let's see what happens if we give a guy 40 touches in a game. Like what? Just
that
would
be
happen?
Nice. Honestly, my path to winning is probably the Ravens passing offense. If Lamar goes nuts the next few weeks, I've got some teams that I don't have that many teams, but the ones I have are probably tilted towards Lamar. The Lamar Andrews stuff is like kind of squeaked by. And, it didn't help me a ton, but it was like okay enough to kind of get through. So an Andrews mini resurgence, score some touchdowns, and I'll be feeling pretty good.
So not Deontay Johnson.
Not Deontay Johnson. I didn't have a ton of Deontay. But yeah, he's an afterthought. I've got it through Zay, I've got it through Andrews. Not really through Henry, but Bateman, all that.
Right. Deontay Johnson on Carolina. Adam Thielen, the Panthers a little bit. They have Dallas coming up. That's live.
Adam Thielen is going to be this year's Zay Jones, the guy who completely broke fantasy scoring as a mid. Yeah.
At least he's somebody that we'd heard of all through the summer when we were drafting these teams and not third string quarterbacks or backups to backups. Keyshawn Vaughn is possibly in line to step in San Francisco.
No, dude. I'm pretty confident it's going to be Abanikanda.
Well, they were both there for a few days, and Vaughn played yesterday, and Abanikanda didn't. I want you to be right, because at least he was somebody on the radar this year. But
I was on with Sigmund Bloom on the couch last week, and he was... Well, I mean, Guerrero might also not be injured. Guerrero he might come back and be fine. But I would bet Keyshawn Vaughn is like the most zero ass running back. Like he just is not good at all. Abanikanda has got some juice. I mean, Patrick Taylor also has a little juice. My path to winning BBM, is not happening. I think any team I advance will be so heavily duped by other shitty, slappy drafters. Like, I think like whatever team I advance is going to be like, oh, dude, congrats. You advanced your Chase Brown team. Every other shitty, slappy guy who faded Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry also has Chase. Like, I don't have any differential plays, if that makes sense. Like, probably if I went and looked, probably all my teams advancing have Rico Dowdle, Chase Brown, and Brock Bowers on them effectively.
Yeah. I have some 5.55s that are kind of interesting where I've got like Rashad White and some like weird dudes that I didn't normally take.
If Chase Brown like legit crushes tonight, I think I can advance as many as 4 out of 7 big dogs, but probably will advance at least 2. So that's my way out of the tunnel. Because I purposely kind of hedged in those. Like I took Chase over Jefferson on 2 of those. Turns out, kind of a good idea. Kind of a good idea to have someone Jamar Chase.
Big dog pain too soon. I'm in one yesterday. Pat's in it. And there are 3 of us for 2 spots. And I looked at like 1 a.m. and I had 58 points. No Daniels, like just the bye weeks and then Pitts, right? Just that's whatever that is at this point.
I have one that I'm thinking we'll get through without a quarterback, but I need a quiet game for Mike Gesicki, but that's a Lamar team. That's a Lamar. I wonder how much the Brown stuff will carry teams through. Because it is interesting. Like if you stacked it, the slappies, right? We stacked it. Like I have the Deshaun Watson teams advancing because they have Jeudy.
When was Jeudy traded?
Early, right?
Yeah,
really early. Before the NFL draft, I think even.
Okay. Yeah, that could fall right then.
Yeah, it was all my stuff was
March
soon as
9th.
he was on the Browns, yeah.
March 9th.
Yeah, okay.
Is he good?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
No, Dave. Split decision on if Jerry Jeudy's good.
I don't know. It's like here's like the hierarchy of NFL wide receivers is like, okay, clearly Juwan Jennings is the best, and then it's like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Like Jeudy can have a Brandon Cook style career where like he's got some spike weeks. Oh, he scored 9. He scored Robert Woods. Robert Woods actually very good comp for what Jeudy could be in a competent offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Robert Woods was pretty awesome for a while. You know, he was like 15 PPR points per game for like 3 or 4 years, until Stafford came along and it was just like cut. But for a minute there, it was like it was even.
Oh, the crack rock moments in the main event.
We took Robert Woods over Cooper Kupp.
I did too in the bare knuckle, and that probably cost me bad. Of course it did. I mean, I did the same thing because I watch you guys.
Well, I mean,
I blame you.
Outvoted. We won a cup.
Is Jameis going to start next year for the Browns?
I hope so, man.
I mean,
well, what's his contract situation?
I think he's a free agent.
I do too. I'm not sure, but I think that's right.
Well, they're not going to want to pay him. Well, except NFL teams never want Jameis. I suppose. No one. That I was going to say. Oh, no one's. Someone's. No. Sam Darnold's going to get a giant check.
Yeah.
The Raiders, I get. Well, of course, Aaron Rodgers will be starting for the Raiders, so I guess that takes care of itself. Can we get
again? You
have
to
the Jets.
8 teams at 3-10 or 2-11. There's a lot to hash out. First overall pick. If New England gets it, they're not drafting a quarterback. I don't know who the guy is. I'm saying that it depends on sort of what the prospect looks like versus the free agent, who the free agent is. I think we talked about Winston last week as somebody that teams would hate because the turnovers are just.
Yeah, it's always what happens. We love him in fantasy and no coach wants to start him.
Right. I think the problem that you have with Jameis is that in order to win with him, you have to like play for shootouts and play for variance.
Yeah. And coaches hate that shit too.
They hate that.
Yeah.
But like, so what ends up happening is you end up doing like New Orleans Jameis, which just sucks.
Which is like, it's miserable. It's bad for him. It's bad for no one likes it.
It's so bad because you're saying like, I have this volatile quarterback who I can't trust like down to down. So I'm going to like limit his sample as much as possible and just pray he doesn't like do a back-breaking mistake, which he does more than
which he will do. That's the thing. You got to give him like 70. You got to give him like 60 dropbacks a game to minimize the impact of the back-breaking mistake. He can't help himself, dude.
Yeah, those are coming. So you have to, but he also makes awesome plays. So like you have to like just give him a ton of plays to work with, take the good with the bad, and you'll score points. But teams, that's just not how they operate.
If I'm a coach comfortable in my position, maybe I've, been around long enough and I need a quarterback, I want to take a chance on him. The touchdown to Jeudy yesterday to make it
was such a good play.
That is incredible. Like who is rolling left, getting to the line of scrimmage? When does he even see Jeudy on that play? And you've got 3 defenders in the area and he just like across his body, 30 yards downfield, touchdown. They made it look easy. I think you want to sort of, if you can afford it as a coach or an organization, you want to bet on talent. And as hard as it is, and as important as it is to get that right, he's still tempting.
I think that the most fun outcome is that he goes to the Giants. And Brian Daboll probably paired with like a mid, or what are they going to do in the draft? Like
they're taking Cam Ward.
Cam Ward. Okay, so you get Jameis and Cam Ward.
Daboll's got to be gone, right? Though.
No, I think Daboll gets a pass.
Yeah, no, I think Daboll and I think Shane might go, but Daboll probably stays.
Yeah,
I think they're together. They both went from Buffalo together, so I would think they would either be both or none.
But how together are they really?
I don't know.
If Daboll like, are you together? He might say, we are right now.
Russell Wilson will need a contract.
Well, Russell Wilson will get a contract for the Steelers.
Yeah, I'll just stay with the Steelers.
Yeah.
What does Tennessee do?
Fields is probably going somewhere else.
Tennessee could be a sneaky Darnold team. They could be basically, they say, oh, we're the same thing as we say the same thing. We're the Vikings. We have a good defense. We have a super low volume offense. We have our great wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, We have Nick Westbrook-Akine, so you have your Jordan Addison.
Yeah, Darnold, you won't even notice.
Yeah.
You won't even notice the change.
I find where Darnold goes next year to be one of like it's so fascinating. I really do wonder. There's definitely a chance. Everyone says no chance, and right now the team is saying no extension. But I think there's a chance he comes back. If they're in the NFC Conference Championship, you're telling me there's no chance they re-sign Darnold? I don't buy it.
If you got this play out of McCarthy, you'd be ecstatic.
You'd be if you, what are they, 11-1, 11-2,
11-2.
11-2. Yeah, they would be like, oh my God, JJ McCarthy, deliver us. In fact, McCarthy would be they'd be like 7-5 with him. McCarthy would not be playing this well.
He can't. Yeah, it would be it'd be very, very difficult for him to play this well.
Well, their defense
ceiling's higher with McCarthy, but
their defense is great. I mean, maybe not great, but aggressive, and like they're playing teams that can't handle it.
It's great.
Darnold is like everyone. When Darnold looks bad, he looks like such a buffoon. Like a bad Darnold play is like a Jameis play where you're just like, I don't even know what you're seeing here. But
if he plays against Minnesota's defense, he goes 18 for 35, 244, 2-2.
Like, he's only having the success because he doesn't have to play the Vikings.
A little bit. I do still think that. I do Purple Insider with Matt Collar every Wednesday. We talk about this at length. What do they do? It's a good one, but he gets paid somewhere. It might depend on whether they win in the playoffs. You know, if they don't win in the playoffs, it seems it never was.
Yeah, bounce in the wild card round. Sam, thanks for your service. We appreciate you, brother.
I mean, Case Keenum started an NFC Championship game on color TV for Minnesota, and that they went in a different direction. So they've been down this road.
But the deal with Case Keenum, the deal you struck with Case Keenum was always he's a really good backup quarterback. Like basically he never agitates. He's a good locker room guy. Case Keenum is the point and click quarterback. I mean, he was an air raid guy, so that was what he did. He painted by numbers. Darnold is the exact opposite. Darnold actually makes stuff happen. He anticipates. He gets out of the pocket. He scrambles. He challenges the defense. It's not a 1-to-1 there.
Yeah, I think Darnold's, to be honest, as far as like looking ahead for what is likely to happen. I mean, it does feel a little like Daniel Jonesy, where the worst thing you can do is like commit
completely.
To this.
Yeah,
right. Like bet that this will continue in a way where if you're wrong, you're like screwed. Like that's
screwed. Yeah,
just don't do that. I think if you could get him on like a cheap, team-friendly 2-year deal with McCarthy, so the second he kind of turns into a pumpkin, you just go to the rookie.
Yeah. Oh God, imagine a 4-year, $160 million deal for Darnold. I mean, the moment that ink dries, you're like, when can we get out of this?
Yeah.
How much is guaranteed?
Fine. Look at Tua right now. I mean, he is kind of on a heater since he came back. But does it feel like a Super Bowl bet? No.
They like look depressing, man. Yeah. I don't know what the deal is. Like no one on that team has broken a tackle in the month of November. Like it's it's like A-Chain scoring a bunch of points, but he looks awful doing it. A-Chain, I don't know what the deal is. He just like
he put on weight. He can't put on weight as a running back.
Hayden had this great tweet yesterday that I think about, and I just in general, these teams with these 5'10", 195-pound running backs, they really just got to make a deal. What's the breaking point of giving this guy too many carries? And I think A-Chain pretty clearly, they basically, I assume it was very similar to like Pollard stuff, where they were like, we're going to give you the ball a ton, but you got to put on 10 pounds. And A-Chain putting on 10 pounds, he still has the vision.
Yeah,
he still has the vision, but he doesn't have the wiggle,
Right. Yeah, he shouldn't have put on the weight.
Yesterday, he got stopped 3 times inside the 3 early in that game. I'm like, I need
36 expected points on that drive.
And then he got the ball again and he made it. So there, no Mostert. They used him in that role, but as it cost him on the other side. Just another hat tip to Mayfield. I mean, that's been part of the story of the year. These veteran quarterbacks. We had Geno already sort of reestablish himself and the Darnold point, but Mayfield. I mean, think about the last 2 years with this guy. shunned from Cleveland. It's Watson. Carolina. Will people remember him playing for the Rams in that night game?
I remember that. That was fun. He came in. He didn't know the playbook.
It was fun. He never practiced.
Yeah.
Yep. He falls into a good situation with Canales and Tampa. They go to the playoffs in a bad division.
Darnold. Way better than Darnold.
I think Baker's better than Darnold for sure. The thing with Darnold is you got to this was funny. We saw this yesterday. Like, if you protect him, he can do awesome stuff. And if you don't protect him, he looks like a disaster. And the Falcons were getting after him throughout that game, but then they wouldn't get out, or he'd escape. He'd make a sick play to Addison. But a lot of it comes down to he's not leaving the pocket. So you got to protect him and allow him to attack downfield. So he's got to be someone with a good offensive line, which he is where he is with a good offensive line right now. But most likely if he leaves the Vikings, I was looking at the PFF pass block grades, where he might go. There's a lot of bad offensive lines out there that could use a quarterback. The Titans are 28th in pass block grade. The Giants are 27th. So I think trying to recreate this Darnold experience on another team is probably going to end in disaster. The one that jumped out to me, I was looking at the pass blocking stuff, was the Colts, not for Darnold, but for Winston. Doesn't it feel like Winston taking over next year when Anthony Richardson gets hurt or benched, and he just does this again for us?
You guys, that's every week, Pat is pushing this idea that the Colts are going to go get a good backup, and they just did, and they got away with it. I don't know.
Well, it's the thing. I guess Flacco might still be under contract, but replace Flacco with Winston. That sounds great to me.
Oh boy,
I agree.
Wow. You too. The clock has ticked over 1 hour, which I don't mind. I talked to Pete this week. He's like, "Shope, you're not in radio. You don't have to worry about it." So I'm not worried about it, but it is an hour, and it's been fun.
I'm not worried about it, he said nervously.
But I'm moving on. Anything special you guys want to promote? You guys are both doing tons of work.
Right after this, I'm going to go refill my coffee, but then Pat and I are going to do a playoff best ball stream where we fire up the sidekick and talk through some of the stuff that basically we're going to argue against Sacrilegious and his.
Do we want to bring him on? Do you want us to have the debate?
Sure. Yeah. If he wants to.
I kind of need to have this debate, and we might as well do it online.
Yeah. If Sack is around, he is more than welcome to join the program as always.
Wish I could join you. We'll have to wait until next Monday. But good luck tonight and into the best ball playoffs with Pat Kerrane and Davis Maddock. I'm Mike Shope. This is ADP Chasing. See you next week.
Press the button, Pat.
Oh, I gotta press it. I was waiting for you guys. All right. See you later.